Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode on the show, Control or Be Controlled, a podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And as always, I remain your host, Darlington. Our guest today is Michael Upstone. Our guest today believes the future of healthcare may involve a deeper understanding of the body's ability to adapt, regenerate, and restore balance. Michael is the author of the Frequency Healing book series and president of Keep Health Research, where he provides education, training, and support on energy and frequency-based technologies. With 18 years of experience evaluating and working with a wide range of technologies, including electrical adaptive stimulators, soft lasers, hydrogen therapy, healing systems, and brain training technologies. Our guest today has dedicated his work to helping people better understand the possibilities and limitations of frequency healing. His approach focuses on looking beyond hype and helping people understand concepts like proper dosing, combining modalities, and supporting the body's natural processes. Today, we will explore the science, experiences, and ideas behind frequency healing and discuss how technology, biology, and human health may intersect in the future. Michael, welcome to Control or Be Controlled.
Thank you very much, Darlington. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Michael. And I hope you enjoyed that introduction.
Very nice, thank you.
Okay, so my journey into frequency healing has spanned nearly 2 decades. Tell us what first sparked your interest in this field.
Well, it was a personal experience, actually. 18 years ago, I met a businessman who was talking about some people who you rarely heard of in those days. So they were Tesla and Rife and Reich and people like that. And it was like a little test, but I'd heard of some of these people. So he explained how he had been in big trouble the week before. He was literally bent double with a back problem. And he was in the office when I met him, and he explained in front of his secretary how she had to drive him to see this therapist with a little device from the Russian space medicine program, an energy healing device. And I was immediately interested in this, but I was much more interested after the secretary burst out laughing and explained how this therapist had brushed this guy's arm with the electrodes on a little handheld device like a Nokia mobile phone and said after 8 minutes, you can straighten up now. And she almost cried with laughter, talking about the expression on her boss's face, how absolutely amazed he was. So I went down to meet this therapist. I experienced the device, and I found that, in fact, my eyesight was improved by this, even though I didn't really have a sort of problem, so to speak of, because when I looked at my digital watch the next day, I could easily see the difference between a 1 and a 7. So at that point, I decided to get one of these devices. They weren't too expensive, and to get training. And I've been using frequency healing devices now ever since for 18 years.
Okay, thank you so much, Michael. So moving on, honestly, I need to upload that that particular answer you gave me was very, very, very incredible. So, when you began exploring energy healing technologies, what surprised you most about what you discovered?
How how incredibly quickly these things can work sometimes. Literally, I think most people would say that, obviously not all the time, but in many situations like a miracle. So, I've got many examples like this, but there was a guy that I met in Liverpool who asked me for a treatment, and I had the same device, and I brushed his arm for about 8 minutes. And very often people want to test you with this equipment. They don't tell you what their problem is. And so I brushed his arm for about 8 minutes, and he got very excited after about 2 minutes. And I said, what was going on? And he said, I can feel my leg properly again. I said, okay, well, you didn't tell me there was any problem with your leg. How did it feel before? And he said, numb and tingly. And I said, okay, why was it numb and tingly? I broke my back. When did you break your back? And I think it was 28 years beforehand. It was 26 or 28 years. And I said, do you mean to tell me for the first time in that time you can feel your leg properly? And he said, yes. And I can't wait to go home and jump in the bath tonight, because in fact, every time I've jumped in the bath for the last 26 or 28 years, I've had a sharp electric shock from my leg. So I've had all sorts of amazing experiences like this, but very, very rapid healing is possible with these technologies. And that's the thing that's been the most surprising, I think.
All right, Michael. So for people who might not know, what does the process look like for this technology healing?
Well, you've got all sorts of different segments of the marketplace with frequency healing devices, at least 9 that I've worked out. But and it depends then on the device, because some are like whole body things. So you can sit in a room full of screens which are projecting frequencies and signals and light at you. But the devices I prefer are very small, handheld, portable devices. And in fact, they are also very, very powerful. And in many ways better, I think, than these things costing many times the cost. So the quickest and easiest way with something like a soft laser, which is a home gentle, effectively light device, but very powerful. It works very quickly. Or something like an electrical adaptive stimulator, which is that one that looks almost like a mobile phone, but with metal electrodes on the back, is simply to put it over a point of pain. So they can be used very, very simply and intuitively. But equally, because of the way we know the body works and the wiring of the body, the fact that bodies are built out of patterns, for example, then if someone had a back problem like sciatica, where the pain is actually going down the backside and the leg, but not on the site of the injury on the back, then in that situation, I would know that nerve inflammation from the back is going to be reflected in the arm. So I can actually brush the arm to find that reflected nerve inflammation and treat through that method, which is very, very convenient in public. But really, there's all sorts of devices. I've covered about 80 in my books, and there are quite different ways of using various devices.
Okay, so let's talk about your book, The Frequency Healing. For someone completely new to this concept, what does frequency healing actually mean?
Well, our bodies work on energy. So our central nervous system is using electrical impulses to stimulate nerves to receive signals with respect to pain and things like that. So we are creatures of energy, effectively, and that works very closely with the chemical system in the body, which produces a natural healing pharmacy as well, called neuropeptides. So we can access that through the electrical system also. But there's a third mechanism as well, which many people haven't heard of, which goes back to the work of a biophysicist called Fritz Albert Popp in the 1970s, actually, who discovered that the DNA actually produces light, and this light is transported around the body through microtubules in the cell exoskeleton. So when we have low energy, it has all sorts of impacts on us. We know that when we've had a very, very bad night, maybe a few bad nights. Maybe we've been working shift work or we've been working very late. We have to get up very early in the morning for some reason. We have low energy. What we don't realize, because the restoration of the energy is such a slow process, is that impacts our hearing. It impacts our eyesight. It impacts our perception of color. It impacts our peripheral vision, all sorts of things, brain function, and speed of decision making, things like that. So we're creatures of energy, and then we can also be disturbed by energy. So frequencies are not agnostic. And what that means is there's a little warning on your mobile phone when you buy it, or your Wi-Fi router, or the 5G mast perhaps near your office, that these things are biologically disruptive. And in fact, there's links to cancer with some man-made frequencies. But the frequencies that resonate with the body can be picked up by the body, can be used by the body. And so the main reasons why bodies don't heal, when we look through the energy healing or the frequency healing lens, are low energy or poor communications. And poor communications means that we have a lag in terms of adapting to an injury, adapting to an illness or something like that. So these processes can be greatly enhanced and accelerated through applying the right devices with the right energy to the body.
All right, Michael. So you have documented many case studies involving chronic pain, injuries, and other health challenges. Which experience had the biggest impact on the way you view healing?
Many experiences actually have impacted me profoundly, but I think the first one was the first serious thing that I had to deal with, which was a lady who was only in her 50s. She'd been a very good sportswoman, and she'd had a stroke. And so I was very nervous, actually, of treating this lady, but I had the equipment, I had the training, I knew what I needed to do, so I did it. And I treated her for about 40 minutes, mostly on the back, but some points on the face as well. And immediately after that treatment, the first thing she did was stand up out of her wheelchair and balance on what had been her bad leg. So I was absolutely amazed by this, and so was her husband, who was there at the time. So many amazing events that I've witnessed with these technologies, and in fact, so much so that I can say now that although our speciality at Keep Health is usually with very difficult, complex, late-stage chronic illnesses, things like that, things considered uncurable by the medical profession, then very often we can have profound and dramatic and long-term results with those things. Not always, because we're operating in a very grey area as to what is possible, and we're dealing with a very complex environment. So now I'm more surprised if they don't work with people. And that sort of led me into another area of research, which is how we can support these technologies and the body better through a holistic strategy, vitamins, minerals, supplements, other things.
Okay, so Michael, you just said you were able to cure someone of stroke in 40 minutes with frequency healing.
Yes.
That's incredible. Because a lot of people die of stroke around the world. Are you aware of that?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, this is where, I like skeptics. And I think it's a very sensible position to have, actually, because the world is full of very, very poor information and misleading people and stuff like that. So this is why what I suggest is if people have a look in the read sample section of my third book called Frequency Healing, Energy Healing on Amazon, then you'll see the pictures, and you'll see pictures of a finger of a 91-year-old woman with Alzheimer's, actually, who had a blood blister, and they're time-stamped images. Her daughter treated her for about 10 minutes, and you'll see an hour later that finger was like it had never had a problem in the first place. You'll also see dramatic pictures of a child, probably about 10, something like that, with a very, very severe traumatic brain injury. in really a catatonic state on the first photograph, and the second photograph was taken after a 12-minute treatment, and that child, their eyes are clear, they're focused, they're no longer glazed. The child is looking directly into the camera, now has awareness of the world, things like that, and that's the result of 12 minutes with a brain training technology. So this is very important, and this is why I've put so many photographs, eye charts, x-rays of bone regeneration, things like that into the book, as well as more testimonials to explain how well these things work. So I don't dismiss skeptics. I think they have, it's not a bad instinct to have, it's a good instinct, but we need to cater to it.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, what does it cost you to be able to do frequency healing, especially for stroke? Because in Africa, people die of stroke so much. So what does it cost? And is this something that someone can start practicing in Africa?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, there are variations on equipment, so the prices do vary. You can get results from things like tuning forks, for example. They're not very expensive. Now, my preference is for the technologies derived from the Russian space program in the 1980s, because they put over 1,000 of their top doctors, biophysicists, engineers into a program to make devices for space travel. And the reason is very sensible if you think about it. Where are you going to keep your pharmacy in space? That's going to take up space. And then if someone does start using those pharmaceuticals, then that's going to come out in the water, and the water's recycled. And as we know from the big cities, that the estrogen pill is the biggest contaminant in the water of the cities. So that implies a relatively big, heavy machine. And anything big and heavy is very, very expensive when it comes to space. So they put 10,000 man-years of effort over a 10-year period, their top people, into this program. They spent at least, in modern terms, $5 billion. But the technologies are relatively accessible, especially when we start to compare the really expensive stuff in the market. So these devices vary from around about $1,000 to about $20,000. There are a range of things in between as well. And this is another sort of speciality of ours, is putting different things together, because various approaches have particular strengths and weaknesses. But if we want to compare that, but and what this can do, so this can treat animals, it can treat illnesses, it can treat injuries, it can improve wrinkles and cosmetology appearance and things like that. They can be applied for sports, for faster decision making, faster brain processing, better sense of balance, more awareness, more accuracy, speed, stamina, things like that. But when we compare them then against, some specialist devices, so one specialist device costing over 10 times the one that we deal with, is called an ablating laser. And that's, in fact, no, it's more than that. It's many hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what that does is that strips away the top layer of skin on someone's face. And it's like having bad sunburn for a few days, but it helps to regenerate the skin effectively. So we have much better options than that. And there's another device called transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is where magnetic frequencies are put into the brain to deal with very severe depression, for example. Well, those units can cost $5 to $6 million. And so it's one of those areas where actually spending a lot more might not get you better results at all. It might even get you worse results. So the beauty of this is that there's a sort of certain democracy in this area. Although these devices may be very expensive for African people, if a village or a community was to get together, then there is certainly the possibility that they may be able to afford something like this and take advantage of it. But most people have never even heard about it. And the ones who have tend to often pick up on very poor information to do with memes like, what's the frequency for cancer? What's the frequency for schizophrenia? And so we also provide training and support for these devices as well, because you can cause harm if you don't do the right things in the right way.
Thank you so much. So this we need proper training for someone to be able to do this. I don't think there's somewhere in Africa where we can get that training hands-on. I think we don't have that in Africa.
Well, this is why really our focus is on, so we deal with people all over the world. And the thing is, people forget things. We deal with old people, sick people, people with brain injuries, people with brain fog, memory issues, things like that. And we have to make it really foolproof and easy and accessible anytime. So the vast majority of the training is done remotely. So people get videos, they can save the videos to their computer, they can look at them anytime. But they also get some printed materials as well as quick reminders. And then there's also very personal support. So like you and I are talking now, we can talk, we can set up an internet call, and then after they've done the training, I can make sure I can answer their questions. And then they might want to get really specific. I own a clinic. I'm treating 12 people. They've got all these problems. How do I deal with that? Or I've got a problem, or my relative's got a problem. How do I deal with that? But generally, what we're teaching is a methodology. Actually, it's a way of using these things. So I think it's not necessarily prohibitive to use in Africa on that basis, as long as people have some kind of communications mechanism.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mark. So, what do you believe healthcare will look like in 10 or 20 years from now? And where do frequency technologies fit into that future?
That's a very good question. That's a long time ahead. What I understand from this market, according to independent market forecasters, is that frequency healing now is like digital photography in the year 2000. It's scheduled to grow tenfold over the next 10 years. So absolutely massive growth in the next 10 years. And there's two ways that this can happen. The way that it's happening at the moment is that the general public are adopting these things. The medical profession are very tied into the pharmaceutical industry, their financial vested interests, their training is predicated on that. And very serious figures in the world of medicine, the former editors-in-chief of the New England Medical Journal and the British Medical Journal, have talked about up to 50% of the clinical trials for pharmaceuticals being effectively fraud or flawed, and deliberate manipulation of data. So what I see is that the public are definitely interested and adopting these things already. Certainly, there are some clinicians who are picking up on this. We deal with brand new clinicians through to, people who've worked in frequency healing for 40 years or more in some cases, who are looking for an edge. And we have some really different technologies, real contenders to be the best in the world, actually. And then there's doctors. There's a small number of doctors and dentists who are picking up on these technologies as well. So I can see that this is going to come to some kind of a crisis where perhaps major pharmaceutical companies will go out of business, actually. And maybe the public will just take over. But I suspect then that this is going to grow in terms of clinicians and doctors discovering these things, doing research, getting experience and training, and doing it for themselves. So I think this is going to be a very, very major shift in the area. Whether it ends up completely in the hands of doctors and clinics and health services and things like that, I've got no idea. But if a health policymaker hears about this, and if they can escape the financial control of what they do through the pharmaceutical industry, then a health authority or a government ministry of health would be able to save millions or billions a year in their healthcare provision. and get better outcomes.
Okay, thank you so much, Michael. That is a rich, but 20 years is a long time, so that's very, very possible. So for someone listening who is dealing with a chronic issue and feels like they have run out of options, what message do you want them to hear?
Well, after my first book was published last year in March, at the end of that month or in early April, I was contacted by a lady in England who had, I think, 3 chronic illnesses, and she was in a pretty bad way. And she wasn't wealthy. She couldn't afford really the equipment that she needed to deal with her situation. So, and she was really on the verge of giving up. So the second book really got written all about this, which is then the holistic strategy, things that you can do very cheaply, very powerful science at home. And so I suggested 3 things for her to do, and one included dry fasting. So this is based on Nobel Prize winning science by Professor Yoshinori Osumi, Nobel Prize winner for physiology and medicine. And he talked about the benefits of fasting and how this creates stress in the body that produces special proteins. He mentioned that it can be used for cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and various other things. So this was one of the things that she did, and what I suggested to her. Well, I got in touch with her at the end of June, I think it was, to follow up, because I try and follow up with people. And she said, "You'll never guess what." And I went, "Oh, okay. What happened?" And she said, "Well, I was going around the shops with my friend the other day, and my friend turned round and said, 'What have you been doing?' And she said, 'What do you mean?' She said, 'Well, every time I've been round the shops with you in the past, you've been stopping every few minutes due to pain or fatigue.' And she said, 'You've just gone round the shops. No problem today.' And she said, 'Then I realized I even ran up the stairs the other day for the first time in years.' So there are almost free things that you can do in order to really provide great things for your body. The ideal is this is a holistic strategy, but also if you're interested in the frequency technologies, then knowledge is power. So I'm aiming to help people to be connected to this and to the latest science in terms of using melatonin for cancer and things like that. So there's some very, very useful studies in there, but also not everything is expensive. Some things are very, very cheap or free even.
Michael, thank you so much. This has been so entertaining, honestly, because right now I almost feel like I have discovered a cure to the problem of stroke and many illness in Africa. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your perspective on frequency healing, technology, and the evolving conversation around human health. Whether listeners are familiar with these concepts or hearing about them for the first time, this conversation highlights the importance of curiosity, research, and understanding how the body works. So for those who would like to learn more about your work, how can they do that?
The easy way, first of all, I would say the easy way is to go to Amazon and just search for these 3 words: frequency healing series. If you don't put the word series in, you're not going to get the same results. But if you put frequency healing series, you'll definitely see my books at the top of the list. You can have a look at the read samples. You can decide if you're a Kindle reader, you can get them for free. That's one way, because in the back of each book also, we like to talk to people. We don't charge any money for this. We're here to offer research and education to the public. So my contact details are in the back of each of the books, which are also available as audio books and Kindle books. Or you can just go to our website, which has links to over 1 million studies, over 300,000 for frequency healing, free videos from our course. And there you can email me also, again, if you want to talk. We talk all the time with people. And that is keephealthresearch.org.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you all for listening to this episode of Control or Be Controlled. If this episode gave you a new perspective on health, healing, and human potential, share it with someone who may find it very valuable. Until next time, remember, understanding the forces that influence your life is the first step towards taking control of them. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye, guys. Thank you, Michael.
My pleasure. Thank you, Darlington.